locked out of her account.
Oh, she locked out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go ahead and get started since she's in the room. All right. I want to reconvene this meeting of the Williamsburg-James City County School Board, and it is pretty exciting to have so many faculty, staff, teachers, family members here advocating for better pay raise for our employees here. So thank you guys for being here. Thanks for our community being here and offering comment on our CIP this evening and public comment in general. So thank you all for being here. As we begin, if I can have a member certify closed session.
Mr. Chair, I certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, the Williamsburg-James City County School Board, while in closed session, discussed only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements as stated in Virginia law, and that only such public matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ortego. Any discussion? Oof, sorry. Hearing none. Ms. Aller?
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. Wow, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, if I can have a member give a motion for the agenda this evening.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, Ms. Ortego, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Any discussion on the agenda? The only thing I want to add is that we're not going to change the agenda too much, but based on the number of speakers that we have this evening, I want to give due deference to our speaker from WHRO and move the WHRO presentation up to just after the Pledge of Allegiance, so that'll be 4.05 for WHRO. All right. Ms. Aller.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. All right. Skip right over the public hearing. I apologize. Thank you, Ms. Cook, for bringing me back. Let's move into the Pledge of Allegiance, Ms. Hunley, and then we'll move on to our public hearing for our CIP.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Hunley. Thank you all for joining us in that. All right, we're going to backtrack here for a moment and go to item 3.1, our public hearing on the 2024 Capital Improvement Plan. Dr. Beers, do you have instructions for us?
It is at this point of our meeting where citizens are invited to address the board. Those citizens desiring to speak have submitted speaker cards to the clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. These speakers are asked to come to the podium when their names are called, state their names for the record, and direct their comments to the chair of the board. It's in the board's interest and desire that all comments are heard and respected. Hence, the citizens are asked to not engage in applauding, verbal outbursts, or any other type of demonstration. Though the board does not respond to your comments are heard and appreciated. Each speaker is allocated 1 minute and 30 seconds to make their presentation, and the board asks that you respect this time limitation. Also, please be reminded that no time may be yielded to another speaker. Your acceptance and adherence to these guidelines will be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my directions are concluded.
Thank you, Dr. Beers.
And we have one speaker, Mr. Jay Everson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jay Everson, 6923 Chancery Lane in Cornell Heritage, ably represented by Mr. Dowell. I came here today about the CIP. I will say that in the past I've come and had grave concerns about the future thing. But I will tell you this, that in the last, from 2017 to the present, it is showing pretty accurate numbers when the future became present. Not so much on the 10-year. However, in both cases, they overestimated the number of kids who would appear at our schools. I have given you a breakdown of that data, along with exactly where that data came from. Now, the point here is that your own data indicates there is zero need for any capital costs for increasing capacity of any school, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school. In fact, in the next 10 years, your own projections show a declining enrollment. And in 10 years, it shows an increase for the middle school, in which you have $2.5 million for expansion of phase 2, up 7 kids. Now, I know you have a lot of people here tonight who are interested in raises. Well, you know, if we're spending money on buildings that we do not need, current interest rates, it'll be very difficult for your governing bodies to provide the money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Everson. Thank you.
And that's the last one. We do have Mr. Everson's statement that we'll make sure the board gets it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
No other comments on CIP, Dr. Beers? That was it?
Yeah,
For
I'm
CIP?
sorry. That was
Okay.
it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Everson, for your comments. We're going to move on to item 4.05, WHRO presentation. Dr. Herron.
I believe Dr. Beers is going to introduce this item this evening.
I want to draw your attention to the two gentlemen that came up tonight. Bert Schmidt, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer at WHRO, and God, Elmer, I had your last name. Seward, I'm sorry, Elmer Seward is the Vice President for Educational Services, and they're up here to tell us about the services that they have and how they have served us tremendously in this past year. So, Bert.
Thank you, Chairman Dowell, Dr. Herron, members of the board, members of the public, thank you. I come to you, as Dr. Beers mentioned, because you're one of the 21 school divisions that literally own the license to WHRO. So we provide you every year an impact statement on reporting on your investment in the station. I believe you have a soft copy of that. And I'm not going to go through the whole report, but I do want to give just a quick highlight of the, where am I pointing towards? I'll get this figure. Just the down. Oh, okay, got it. Okay. So, as I mentioned, you're one of 21 school divisions that literally own the license to WHRO. So, we provide a whole host of services. Everything I'm going to talk to you tonight about is something the schools have asked for. We're not educators. Well, a lot of them are educators. I'm not an educator, but we work with the school divisions. But before I get into the report, I want to say two things. First, thank you, Dr. Beers. You've represented this school board for a number of years at our regular meetings of the school board reps. And Dr. Herron, thank you. She has recently joined the governing board of WHRO, so we're thrilled. I'm personally really thrilled to have you. And you're chairing the superintendent group as well. So it's we're getting a lot of work out of you this year. So thank you very much for that. What services does WHRO provide? We provide a service called eMedia VA. This is a digital repository of learning objects, K through 12, SOL aligned learning objects. It could be video, games, audio, lesson plans, all sorts of activities, all searchable by SOL, by media type, by grade level, by keyword search. We've had a 10-year contract with the Department of Education to provide this free to every public, private, and homeschooler in Virginia. This is available to all of your teachers, all your students, and all your parents. It's free. eMediaVA.org is the place to go, and we integrate with your Clever system. We do a lot of professional development for your teachers. You can see the list, what we did just this past year. And now that we're kind of out of COVID, hopefully we'll do even more of those professional training opportunities. Online courses is something we've really been known for. The school divisions asked us about 15 years ago to start creating online courses for you. So think of us as the manufacturer. We make the course and we give them to you. You put them into your own learning management system, and it's all your own education policies. It's expected that you're going to use your teachers to teach the courses. It can be fully online, flipped, hybrid, whatever your policies are. All these courses are made and they're given to you We just released, and I'll talk about this a little later, African American History course, and next year we'll have an environmental science course made available as requested by the school divisions. We want to make sure these courses are really usable by students, so we create a student advisory board. This is students from around the region, mostly high school, because our courses are mostly high school students. And we talk to them about how we present the course. Do you like the way it's presented? Is it effective? And so we're talking directly to the consumer of these courses, making sure that the courses are built in a way that gets them excited about learning. As I mentioned a couple of years ago, the state asked WHRO to create the state's first African American history course. We've done that. That course is now available to every division in Virginia. It is an elective, so again, it's your policies, how you decide to use it. But we worked with the governor's office, the commission that he set up, the Department of Education to provide this course. We do a lot of work in the environmental space. We have a lot of philanthropic dollars around environmental science and environmental courses. And we recently received a national award around a series that brings our animators together with our vans, with our technology. Here's a quick video of that work.
With an entertaining show, a colorful van, interesting lessons, and engaging interactives and games, the WHRO Environmental Van Experience is much more than a great collaboration with the Virginia Stage Company. It is a highly immersive and memorable way for students to become the environmental stewards of tomorrow.
Well, you may not have been able to hear all of that, but we bring the technology that are on your tablets along with the Virginia Stage Company that performs with the characters from Green Beach that you may be familiar with that animated series. That's kind of like the Schoolhouse Rocks for environment. And we come to schools usually for like K through 3, and we work with your divisions. Of course, it's all free, and it's a really immersive way to help teach the young kids about the environment. We love to celebrate smart kids. You know, the football and basketball players get a lot of recognition, but we love to celebrate the smart ones. And so we have a couple of contests. The PBS Kids Writers Contest, this is for elementary school kids, K through 5. They write and illustrate stories, send them to us. We have a judging panel. We then end up creating a TV show where we celebrate the winners. The kids get to read their own stories. We animate the characters from the stories, and we've been doing that for about 15 years now, maybe 20 years. The Spelling Bee you're hopefully familiar with. We're on our 15th year. We're back in person this year for the Spelling Bee. I do not like virtual spelling bees, just an opinion here. So we're going to be back in real life. The middle school, 6 through 8, middle schools do their own bees. Winners come to the WHRO. In the spring, we have the regional bee, and the winner goes to the National Spelling Bee. We are going to have a winner one of these days of the National Spelling Bee. And the Great Computer Challenge. Some of you may be young enough that you participated because it's been going on for 37 years. K through 12 teams of students get together and they compete in various software programs and languages. It's a whole experience over at ODU. We have a junior division and senior division, and Williamsburg always does great. Details are in the pack here. I won't spend the time on that, but you're always well represented in the Great Computer Challenge. Miss Martha Reed's, when COVID, we used to, before COVID, did a lot going out into the community and reading stories to children. We have an extensive early childhood department. COVID hit, we couldn't do that, so we started a Facebook series called Miss Martha Reads. It got so popular that we continued it even though COVID's kind of behind us. And we get about 6,000 to 10,000 views every week, every Friday. Actually, Martha reads the stories from the PBS Kids Writers Contest. So the kids K through 5 that write the stories and submit them, she reads those stories, and it's a on-demand video through Facebook. We have now 3 vans, and if you want our vans to come out, just pick up the phone, call us. We've got a literacy van, an environmental science van, and a STEM van. And it's, again, mostly for the younger students, but we come out with all sorts of lesson activities and technology and books, and so it's a wonderful experience, and we'd love to have our vans. Before COVID, we were going out about 150 times a year. I don't know where we are at the moment, but we're starting to get the vans back out there, so we're happy to get back out in person. And most importantly, as school board members, you care about your return on investment, and while I don't think you have hard copies in front of you, I will reference your return on the investment. On page 13, if you end up going to your report, you will see a financial summary. Last year, you invested $32,000 and received savings in value of $502,000. So every dollar you invested, you saved or received value of $15. So 15-to-1 return on your investment. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the board?
No, the only thing I'd like to point out is that we did have a couple of winners from Williamsburg up here. Violet Allen, who's in Matthew Willey, won first place, 4th grade in the writers contest, and I know kids really like doing that, Bert. So
Yeah,
that was
Williamsburg
great.
always well represents in all of our contests.
Yeah.
Overachievers here in the division.
Yeah,
Thanks to a lot of these guys back behind me. But, yeah.
Ms. Cook?
Thank you. Thanks, Bert, for being here. I always enjoy this presentation, and I just want to thank you for your innovation, not during the pandemic, certainly, but prior to that. You're one of the best public media organizations in the country, and I particularly enjoy your animated work, and have been happy to follow that closely. But I just also want to put a shout out for scholar athletes. We have a lot of those smart athletes out in the division.
That's right.
Just want to make sure.
Very true. Very true.
But anyway, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you.
I always appreciate your presentations, Mr. Seward and Mr. Schmidt. Not the first one that I've been able to be a part of, but I really enjoyed hearing about the writers contest in particular. Growing up, really loving to write, but not really having an outlet for that, and you guys giving students an opportunity to do that at young ages when it's really most needed. So I really appreciate that. I'd like to see some of those illustrations, by the way. Maybe
We can
next
make it
year
happen.
we can.
Come down to the building. We've got them all throughout the hallways. They're all over the
like that.
place. So
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for your work, and Dr. Beers for your efforts serving on the WHRO board as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
And thank you for allowing me to jump in the agenda. Thanks.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is that we are really fortunate to have WHRO as a partner with us because they really are the leader in it when it comes to educational technology all across the country. I know you guys have other stations that come in to find out how you do what you do. So we're lucky.
We're thrilled to have an office here in town, just down the
That's
street
right.
from here. So we're
right.
thrilled to have that presence here.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.1, announcements and superintendent's report. Dr. Heron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our community is rich with manufacturing and trades jobs opportunities, and our high school students have had the chance to learn about them firsthand through our manufacturing and trades days. Students from each high school visit local manufacturing and trades-based organizations for tours and hands-on learning experiences, allowing the students to experience what careers in these fields could include. Last month, War Hill students visited David Nice Builders and Greystone. Jamestown students went to George Nice and Sons and Print Pack earlier this month. And this Friday, Lafayette students will go to Black Creek Workshop and Anheuser-Busch. We thank our business partners for providing these career days for our students. We really appreciate it. Last month, we reported on initial feedback received on a tier and start time potential shift. This week, a follow-up survey will be shared with families, staff, and students in grades 6 through 11. Please be on the lookout for that email this week and complete the survey by Sunday, December 4th. And finally, our elementary schools are on early release schedule this Thursday and Friday for parent-teacher conferences. Elementary teachers are really looking forward to meeting with parents. Please remember that an early release schedule will most likely impact on-time buses for middle and high school students, and we thank our secondary families in advance for their patience as buses may run a little behind on Thursday and Friday. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Heron. Any board members have a report to share?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have one for
Ms. Sumner?
special ed. The Special Ed Advisory Committee met. We had a few members out. I think with flu, possibly some of the members were ill or maybe their children. But they first want to let the board know how much they appreciate our support. Second, they are going to have on January 28th from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock a training on critical decision points that families of children with disabilities make over the child's educational journey. It's going to be taught by the Department of Education, but it's hosted by SEAC and Special Ed Department. It's going to be held at Jamestown, and the registration will open on November 28th, and it ends on December 9th. And again, That will be on January 28th. Also, they would like to just ask us to fully support the CIP funding of the inclusive playground upgrades that have been presented to us. And the last thing is they have created a subcommittee for reviewing secondary grading practices.
Thank you, Ms. Hunley. Any other reports? Dr. Beers?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the members of the school board have recently completed their annual self-evaluation, and we'll be discussing that fairly soon in terms of looking at the issues and challenges that board members have raised. And that's about all I'm going to say right now at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Beers. That's in its draft form at the moment, as that's released to the board this evening, I believe. We're going to put that on the on board docs at our December meeting for the community to see. Myself and Ms. Cook, we were with our liaison committee meeting with leadership with the City Council and the Board of Supervisors last week, and a number of topics came up. Of course, we had a presentation with Dr. Heron and her staff regarding the CIP, and the one area of interest that they shared was with the school being pushed out to 26-27, and so just wanted to indicate that there was some interest and discussion around that. The school being an elementary school, while we are at the moment continuing to push forward on wings for our preschool and Bright Beginning space. Also of note, the Board of Supervisors regarding a potential elementary school, they asked that we come back to our board and really discuss when, if and when a school is needed, an elementary school is needed, to really discuss the parameters that need to go into that decision. Land, location, anything else that the school board finds relevant to the discussion as it goes to our funding partners. And so we said that we would bring that to the board and then kick it over to Dr. Heron and her staff to manage all those questions and then get it to the funding partners at a later joint meeting. And again, that's in relation to down the road, as the CIP indicates, a 26, 27, or later, depending on future growth in our community for a potential elementary school. Any questions on that? It's the first you're hearing it. You'll hear a little bit more from me on that in a future email. I was also privileged, last report from me, I was also privileged to attend the Stonehouse Elementary Veterans Day presentation, and not my first there, but it seems like they're always stepping it up the next notch every year in recognizing the service of our military members and their families, by the way. And it was just an amazing presentation, amazing opportunity to just be rubbing shoulders with the different people in our community that would never have an opportunity to get to talk with or engage with, but we have this thing in common, this thing being a love for this country and a undying gratitude for the people that serve this country. And it was really endearing to see that patriotism and love for country is still alive and well in James City County. And Stonehouse did a really great job representing the division. Really appreciate the faculty and staff and all the 3rd and 4th graders that really gave their heart out in singing those songs. I couldn't see a dry eye in the room, and I was looking through wet eyes, but I was looking. All right, so let me move on to our public comment, item 6.1, Dr. Beers.
Okay. This is another opportunity in our meeting where citizens can address the board. Those citizens desiring to speak have submitted speaker cards to the clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. They are asked to come to the podium When their names are called, state their names for the record and direct their comments to the chair of the board. It is the board's interest and desire that we hear the comments and they are respected. Hence, the citizens are asked not to engage in applauding, verbal outbursts, or any other type of demonstrations during the presentation. This is particularly important because we have a large number of people that want to speak tonight. Personnel matters are not considered in public meetings. Therefore, the board requests that all speakers refrain from making reference to specific individuals in any form or fashion. Though the board does not respond to your comments are heard and appreciated. Each speaker is allocated 1 minute and 30 seconds to make their presentation, and the board asks that you respect this time limitation and you are not allowed to yield time to another speaker. Your acceptance and adherence to these guidelines will be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My directions are concluded again.
Thank you, Dr. Beers.
And our first speaker is Jim Kelly.
Welcome back, Mr. Kelly.
Thought I recognized that name.
Saw you back there. I'm like, wow.
Jim Kelly. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 10 or 11 years ago, I was a new school board member, and I was reviewing the names and qualifications of the folks who were applying to be appointed to the school board from the city of Williamsburg. I remember remarking to Ruth Larson, why in the world would they ever put a Potter on the school board? Ruth said, oh no, Kira Cook is a good one. I'm sure I rolled my eyes and said, whatever. So Kira was not appointed then, but a couple of years later she was. Little did I know then that Potter was going to be someone who I would grow to have a tremendous amount of respect for. More importantly, I did not know then that she would become someone who I am certain I will treasure as a lifelong friend. That doesn't mean we always agreed, nor does it mean that during my years as chair did I always appreciate the Wednesday morning phone calls telling me what I had screwed up the night before. Greg, I'm sure you can relate to that. But I always wanted to hear her perspective and thoughts on any complicated or contentious issues. She had usually thought things through on a much deeper, more thorough level than I had or ever would. I'm going to be on a work trip out of the country for your last meeting of the year, but I wanted to recognize and thank my good friend Kira Cook for her service to the school system and for her service to this community. While her tenure on the school board is coming to an end, I only hope this is a brief pause in her service to our community because we need more people like Kira Cook to be involved and to make our community better. Mr. Chair, please pass along my thanks, as I have to give everything to you, for a job well done to Mrs. Cook. All my best to you. Y'all be good. Don't stay up too late tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Our next speaker is Jessica Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Anderson, and I am both an employee and parent with the WJCC Public School Division. I'm speaking about the upcoming agenda item 11.03, authorizing staff bonus payments. While we all appreciate the sentiment, however, it is nothing more than a Band-Aid on a broken leg. During the pandemic and to this day, we have witnessed countless teachers and staff step up and compensate for being overwhelmingly short-staffed due to illness, early retirement, zero substitutes, as well as those leaving the profession and/or division. In addition to being overworked and lacking critical resources in many areas, we have also witnessed a large-scale attack locally and nationally on the profession of public school educators and the staff. So when WJCC alluded to a 7% pay increase across the board, it was disappointing to see that it was applied to a pay scale, meaning many educators did not in fact receive a 7% increase. And even with set increases on the 22-23 pay scale, WJCC educators continue to be grossly underpaid compared to other nearby school districts, despite outperforming many local districts in educational measurements. I think the continued dedication of our teachers and staff and the need to both attract and to retain quality teachers means increasing the salaries in the WJCC division by a minimum of 10%. If we want to ensure our students are receiving a valuable education, our educators and staff must be valued as well. Please consider these points both tonight and moving forward in the future conversations around budgets and salaries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Robin Pawlowski.
Good evening. to the chair and members of the board. I want to first say thank you to all the teachers and their hard work. I recognize that, but I'm also a representative of parents. And my name is Robin Pavlowski, and I'm here tonight to speak to you on what I believe is very important to every parent and ultimately to every student. Transparency of factual information and just facts in general of what's going on in the classroom. I continue to talk to parents who are unable to find out information about what is being taught to their child in the classroom, and that's concerning. I'm not saying every single parent, but there are enough parents that are making this inference and talking to me about this that is very concerning. After being on a Zoom call with our state education secretary, she is aware of those issues. I hope this board, administration, and all the teachers will make transparency a top concern. Speaking of facts, I want to extend an invitation to the board and all who are listening to attend a movie at the Movie Tavern on Monday, November 21st at 7 p.m. for the showing of The Real Anthony Fauci. This movie gives the facts about what really happened during COVID-19. We need to learn why this happened so we will never respond this way again. The shutdown of our schools did and continues to do incredible harm to our children and community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pavlowski.
And our next speaker is Laura Emery.
Good evening. My name is Laura Emery. I am I live, I work, I pay taxes in James City County, but I'm also a founding member of Surge Historic Triangle Chapter, which is a nonprofit chapter of the national organization called Showing Up for Racial Justice, an organization that believes that mass movement can impact sustainable change in public policy. Therefore, I am here tonight to show my support for the hardworking teachers and employees of the Williamsburg-James City County school districts who deserve a 10% raise. As we all know, Virginia, like the rest of the country, is facing a teacher shortage causing vacancies and larger sizes of current classrooms. And according to a survey at the beginning of the year by the National Education Association, insufficient salaries or low wages was one of the biggest reasons teachers consider leaving their careers. I was also shocked to learn that Virginia is the third worst in the nation when it comes to teacher pay gap when compared to other college-educated professionals. Virginia teachers make nearly 33% less than other college-educated workers, which is unacceptable for highly educated professionals who we are entrusting to teach, mentor, and guide our children in their educational growth. Now, I know we can't fix the whole state, but we can certainly help to close this pay gap within our own school district. Therefore, I would like to thank the school board members who support the necessary salary increase, and I strongly encourage everyone on this board to recommend an immediate approval of the 10% raise to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Emery.
Excuse me, Karen Bergsagale. That close?
Very close. Karen Bergsagale.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Thank
I live in Roberts District, by the way. A couple of things. I wanted to say thank you all for your service, and also to say that I have been attending board meetings for quite some time, and I've never left one feeling more encouraged than the last one. It was really inspiring to see all of you confronting a really difficult problem. The possibility of changing tiers with open minds and goodwill, and clearly simply wanting to find whatever the best answer is for our students. I'm here also to support our amazing teachers. I think one of the signs I saw at the back says it best. Give us our 10% because we give 100% every day. I think that's really, really true. And as a community member, I don't know of a better place to invest in my future than in the schools. So I would also ask for your guidance if we want to see James City County support this request. What do you need from us the citizens of James City County. Thank you very much, Mr. Dowling.
Thank you, Ms. Bursicle.
And our next speaker is Aline Perro.
Good evening, Chairman Dowell, esteemed members of the board, and Dr. Herron. My name is Alyn Parm, President of WJCEA. On behalf of our membership and the amazing employees here with us today, I am here advocating that our raise in salary be 10%. Many of our staff have worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic last year and continue to work beyond 100% for our students. Our salary raise was 7%, but that was overshadowed by our 5% raise in healthcare. Many of our employees, like myself, work more than one job, and our work in our school division is not a 35-hour-a-week job. This 10% raise would put us near the state average of a teacher's salary and would have our division be seen as a competitor, not just for our neighboring divisions, but for students coming out of our local education programs. As a community, we need to work together and to implement strategies that will help progress our school division and ensure our students receive highly qualified educators and educator support professionals. A 10% raise is a start, and we continue to bring more strategies to help the problems that we are facing in our division. Our union thanks you for your leadership and all the great work in our division has done throughout the pandemic. And throughout tonight, I ask that each of you read the comments, see the petitions, hear the comments, and hear what is being said tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barham.
Excuse me, our next speaker is Rachel Rudis.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As a teacher at Hornsby Middle School, I am speaking to you tonight in support of a 10% pay raise for all WJCC staff. As we face a growing labor shortage, the only way to attract and retain workers who can truly help our students thrive is to pay them what they are worth. When I moved here in 2020, rent for a one-bedroom apartment was high but affordable. Now it would be half my monthly salary. That's not including the 13% inflation rate driving up all other costs. If the students are the body and the staff are the organs, then we're failing, and we will continue to do so until we have the staff necessary to ensure success. We are hemorrhaging employees. A 10% pay raise will make WJCC competitive in the regional job market. Research shows that students do better in schools where their teachers and support staff live in their local community. This is becoming increasingly difficult as the cost of living soars. I want to emphasize that this raise is necessary for all WJCC staff. All work is valuable, and I'm reminded daily of the interconnectedness of each of our roles: teacher, custodian, bus driver, cafeteria worker, and more. I have never seen anyone work as hard as my colleagues do for our students. I urge you to consider and approve WJCEA's proposal for a 10% raise for all WJC staff, and I thank you for your work.
Thank you, Ms. Rudis.
Our next speaker is Andrew Barnett.
Dr. Beers, if we could begin indicating who the next person in line is going to be.
Sorry?
If we can begin indicating who the next person in line is going to be so that they're ready to come up.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. Mr. Barnett.
Sure. So the next person will be Kyle Hyde. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Andrew Barnett. I am a teacher at War Hill High School. Me and my wife both teach there. We love this community. We love teaching, but our salary is kind of, it's making us question whether we can continue doing it in this community. Let me pull up what I have written down. So I'm in my 10th year of teaching. She's in her 6th year. We are in our prime. Bringing in brand new teachers, I don't know if that's necessarily the answer. And we don't want to leave. Like, we don't want to leave. But if we could travel 20 minutes away and make $16,000 more a year, it would be financially irresponsible for us not to think about that. We just bought our first house. We were just married last year. We live in Williamsburg, and we want to continue living in Williamsburg. But we need to be able to afford it. And we love working here. We love Williamsburg. I grew up here. I went to James City County Schools. Only thing else I have to say is, yes, I'm here to support the 10% raise and the steps. My 10 years of experience is valued in this district at $3,320. That is the difference between a first-year teacher and me. And we are not the same. We're not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett.
And Kyle Hyde? Oh, there he is. And following Kyle will be John Gulick.
Mr. Hyde.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Hyde, and I'm a member of the community and a law student. I'm the son of two teachers. My partner is a teacher. His mother, his father, two of his sisters, and one of his brothers are all teachers. Another one of his sisters is a speech pathologist. I've witnessed firsthand what goes into being a teacher in and out of the classroom. Living with my partner for several years, I've witnessed him struggle firsthand with only making a teacher's salary. His sister navigated the pandemic with two children as a single parent and as a teacher. It's nearly a universally recognized concept that teachers in America are overworked and underpaid. And I'm here to stand in solidarity with the teachers and staff at this school asking for a 10% raise. You, as members of the school board, have the power to pay these incredible staff members and teachers what they are owed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde.
John Gulick. And John will be followed by Andrew Casson.
Mr. Gulick.
Hello, thank you. I'm unprepared, so I'm talking off the cuff here, bad idea. I had a conversation with my son today, wanted to get a job at Chick-fil-A, because he mentioned it offered at $15.75 an hour. $15.75 an hour. Going on the school board website and scrolling through job openings in November, I came across a job opening for instructional aid, special ed, instructional aid for the classroom, serving the most vulnerable population of students we have at the most finite opportunity to access them, requiring almost an associate's degree. And what do we say to the parents of this community when that employee is paid below fast food wages? What does that say about our values as educators? What does that say about our values as a community that supports that? I think that's tragic, truly tragic. And at some point, we have to hold ourselves accountable what's acceptable. These are professionals doing the hardest job, the most important time in a child's life, and we're saying that not at a fast food salary level below. It's shameful. And I think it's time that the board steps up, not worried about the board of supervisors and what they think, but to say this is what the value is, this is the need. If they decide not to meet it, we'll take this party over there and have a conversation with them. Thank you.
Mr. Gulick.
Andrew will be followed by Marco Sardi.
Hello, good evening. I am Andy Case, and I'm the treasurer of WJCEA, and I'm an English teacher at Jamestown High School. And being an English teacher, I've given out lots of reading assignments, but none as important as this one. WJCEA has collected a total of testimonials from 153 WJCC employees, and we asked them two questions. How did the raise this year affect them, coupled with the cost of the rise in the health insurance costs, and also if they had second jobs? I have about 45 pages of testimonials, and what you will see in here is a lot of frustration, a lot of struggle. It's very raw, and but know that it reflects our passion and our love of this community. And I want you to reflect on this moment as what your legacy will be. Once you leave this board in your tenure, what will you do? What will you do in this moment? Because this is a legacy-defining moment. We've come here today to ask for a 10% raise, and it's the reason why so many people stand behind me right now. It's because we need it. In these testimonials, you'll find single parents struggling to find childcare, rent increases, teachers struggling with long-term health issues like diabetes and cancer, members avoiding medical treatments because of high copays and high deductibles. The cost of healthcare is rising and the coverage is getting smaller. I'll submit these testimonials to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaysen.
Marco Sardi, and will be followed by...
We can't hear you, Dr. Beers.
Sorry. Harry Garrett Williams will follow Marco Sparty.
Good evening, my name is Marco Sardi, and good evening, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the board, and Dr. Herron. I am speaking today as both a teacher and WJCEA's vice president to strongly support an increase of 10% for all faculty salaries for next school year. Every day, I am inspired by the tireless effort of everyone who comes together to make a school division run smoothly and efficiently. Our students consistently put out above average work, be it in test scores or the quality of their performing arts. And it is by the effort of all staff that we help them achieve those results. If our students output above average work, then it then stands to reason that our staff should be compensated with above average pay. Sadly, WJCC ranks tied for last in the Hampton Roads area in this regard. If we are unwilling to pay staff for above average pay, surely then we can all agree that at the bare minimum, the average would be appropriate. And it is again here that unfortunately we fall short. WJCC is 10% below the state average in compensation. An increase of this amount across the board would put WJCC back on track to being a pillar of excellence in this region, one where teachers should feel pride to have earned a spot in a prestigious district that values their work as highly as the work of their students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sardi.
Carrie Williams will be followed by Nathan Romans.
Good evening, members of the school board, chair. My name is Corey Garrett Williams. I am a Lafayette teacher, community leader, and clergy in the Williamsburg, James City County area. I would like to speak very briefly about how the lack of self-care impacts our health care due to the lack of financial resources in the form of a 10% raise. After reviewing the HR's presentation on how we rank among surrounding school divisions and teacher pay, as a veteran teacher of 19 years, I work a full-time job. I am in graduate school working on my second master's degree. And I have 2 part-time jobs, one for which I am paid for. With my years of experience in the time after school should be used planning enrichment lessons, collaborating with colleagues, and most importantly, recharging my batteries to give the 110% to the children I love and teach. Unfortunately, during planning, we are not planning or collaborating most of the time, but substituting and providing coverage to classrooms. Please consider providing a 10% raise to educators in the premier school division that we espouse to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
And Nathan will be followed by Phylan Shoemaker.
Hello, I'm Nathan Romans, the chapter chair of the William Mary Workers Union. In this crowd today, there are teachers, librarians, custodians, professors, dining staff, bus drivers, nurses, office workers, graduate students, faith leaders, and more. And we're all showing up in solidarity to demand respect and action for public education workers. Our community is showing up because we support the mission of education as a public good. Giving a raise to education workers and investing more public tax dollars in education means building up after-school programs, expanding public libraries and parks, and supporting the families who dedicate their lives to our schools. Schools are the bedrock of our communities, and so investing public dollars in these public goods and services really means we are enriching the Williamsburg and James City County communities where we live, learn, and grow. Education workers obviously deserve a 10% raise, but they also deserve so much more. They deserve to support their families without needing to work 2 or 3 jobs. They deserve to earn a comfortable living wage and freedom from poverty wages. They deserve a seat at the table and the power to decide the values and direction of our schools. And they deserve respect and dignity commensurate to the value they create by educating our children. Thank you to the school board leaders and members who already support this raise. You're the type of leaders this community needs if we want a more just and democratic public education system. I hope the rest of you who are opposed to building a stronger community will join the rest of us and stand alongside education workers in this fight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Brian Shoemaker, but will be followed by Helen Murphy.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ryan Shoemaker. I would like to talk about teachers getting a raise. As a student, I am able to witness firsthand what our amazing teachers do. As I look around my school, I see teachers teaching, giving students support, and preparing students for the future. What I don't see at school is my teachers grading over 100 essays, going over a lot of assignments, and making lesson plans and future assignments. All of this they do at home, off work, and off the clock. They aren't paid for this extra time needed to grade and make assignments. I find it ironic that teachers aren't able to do all their work at work, and they don't get paid for the work they do at home, the necessary work that they do at home. Regardless of that, teachers in our district teach little kids and teenagers. It is not easy teaching these age groups. Children are loud, easily distracted, and some can be rude and disruptive. I know this from experience. And the rude and disruptive students don't really care about getting in trouble. With all of this, teachers must get a pay raise. And not just teachers. Our bus drivers, lunchroom staff, janitors, front desk workers, librarians, and many more also need raises because each and every one is very important. Without them, students would not be able to get to school, eat lunch, have a clean school, check in or out at school, get new books. I urge you, Mr. Chairman, to give all of the people a 10% raise. It would make my day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker.
And Helen Murphy is followed by Michael Hassan.
That was amazing. I don't want to have to follow that up. But thank you to the board for having us tonight. I'm Helen Murphy. I'm here as the proud daughter of 2 educators who worked in New York City. We were never rich, but they were able to retire with dignity because of their unions and their pay. Now I'm here in Williamsburg, and I'm the proud parent of a Matthew-Ellie Patriot, who's too shy to come up, and a proud Berkeley Bulldog. Tonight I'm here as a parent to say how much I and my family appreciate our hardworking teachers and staff. They deserve a 10% raise and so much more than that. We shouldn't have to compete with other districts and states for their talent. For example, maybe if we paid bus drivers a real wage, we would have enough drivers to not have the different school levels fighting over the civilized start times. I want to encourage the school board to ask JCC and the city for the resources you need to run the schools properly and to pay all WJCC employees appropriately. I'm happy to join with you to ask the city council for the funds you need. And with my remaining time, I'd like to thank people who have really touched my family's lives. I know we're not allowed to say specific names, but a 5th grade teacher who had to cover 2 5th grade classes for an extended stretch while we looked for a new teacher. The head of our facilities who kept Matthew-Ellie safe and kept all of us safe during COVID, working crazy hours, helping us with our picnic table mission. He knows who he is. Miss Beth, and the most amazing bus driver who retired due to injury. She made terrified kindergartners feel safe, and the list goes on. My family salutes you all, and we thank you for everything you do, especially the hidden work.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Mr. Murphy.
Michael Hassan is followed by Nathan Calvin.
Good evening. He nudged my legs apart with his knees, spreading me as he gripped my hips, tugging them up, before he sheared himself deep in me with a single stroke. I moaned into the pillow at every glorious inch of him, rising onto my forearms as my fingers grappled into the sheets. Rice pulled out and plunged back in, eternity exploding around me in that instant, and I thought I might break apart for not being able to get enough of him. I read part of this book to you about 6 months ago, 5 months ago. I asked all of you to get this book out of our schools. I checked yesterday, one high school has removed this book from its libraries. 2 of the other high schools still have it in their libraries, which our children have access to. Our children have access to this filth, which you are condoning by your inaction to remove it. I'm asking you again to please do me and every other parent a favor and move to make it an agenda item tonight to have this and other similar books removed from our school libraries. Get these books out of our schools today. You've never let a little thing like procedure or an agenda stop you in the past from taking action on an item you wanted, which wasn't on the announced agenda. So please do not let it stop you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hossain.
And Jill Piles will follow Nathan Calvin.
Hello, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Colvin. I'm a 5-year county resident with 2 special needs children, military officer and real estate investor. When families relocate, school quality is at the top of consideration. Their decision drives the local economy and tax base. As school quality declines, so does the community. As pay becomes uncompetitive for teachers, it causes school decline. Restarting after COVID and inflation creates an economy with low unemployment, but a dollar that does not go as far. Teachers are primed to leave. Even new teachers have the opportunity to pursue 6-figure salaries in project management, curriculum direction, and other positions. As teachers leave for these positions, remaining teachers face more workload and responsibilities, increasing burnout, and creating a vicious cycle as attracting new teachers becomes more difficult. While this is a problem statewide, I was surprised to find out that our own teachers are paid increasingly less than the state average. In an affluent area such as Williamsburg, there's really no excuse for this. Coming from a small farm town, 2 things always went forward: school levies and teacher pay. Surely we can do the same thing so teachers can thrive in the same communities as their students. As a military member, I want new arrivals to stop looking at Yorktown first. I want military spouses who teach to make an equitable wage. I want our children to be educated by teachers who are focused on lessons, not paying their bills. As a real estate investor, I want schools to be the best in the area. I need a workforce including newly arrived immigrants that are capable of performing trades in a technologically complex world. As a parent, I want schools to attract the best staff, especially in the highly overburdened special education programs. In all these roles, I am ready to pay taxes on multiple properties for these raises and more.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And Jill Piles will be followed by Jennifer Brogdon.
Hi, thank you to all the staff and all the teachers. I'm sure you're all tired and haven't eaten dinner, so hope you have a good Thanksgiving, eat a lot of turkey. Condolences, I believe a teacher passed at War Hill High School, so condolences to the family and the high school family. I know schools are like families and the teachers are like parents, second parents, and I think sexually explicit material is up in the agenda, how to complain about it, how to be aware of it for us parents. I would like direct contact, some parents, teachers can text very directly and email. That would be great instead of like an opt-out form on the table. Kids come and get this opt-out form, they're not going to get it. So I just like communication, and somebody mentioned transparency, and thank you for a good year, and pray for you guys every day, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Piles.
And Jennifer Brogdon is followed by Jordan Aratasakis.
Hi, Ms. Brockton.
Good evening, Dr. Herron and fellow school board members. This is my first school board meeting. So I've only brought a few notes, but I mostly have brought a big heart. And the big heart that I'm bringing is not just for myself. Excuse me if I get emotional. The people behind me deserve support. I am here to represent the underpaid, underrepresented Under less respected, subs, teacher assistants, and building site subs. I want to give you just a few little glimpses of what it's like in the classroom. So it's a regular day. 2 fourth grade teachers are out. Suddenly, there's only one sub that has answered the call. So the other classrooms have to divide into 4 sections. Now we have 4th grade teachers moving their desks and chairs into different classrooms so that there will be 24 to 26 4th graders in a classroom for one teacher to teach. Now suddenly the SPED teachers and those who give additional support have to divide themselves between these classrooms. This is something that's unrepresented. I don't know that you realize that these things happen, and they happen often. Additionally, a resource teacher is out. So suddenly, either the students throughout the school don't get that resource for the day, or the resource teachers have to have 25 more students in their class, and again, depending upon the subject, those chairs and the desks and those things come in. And what happens is you have students that are just not cared for. In a word, please pay the teachers, the subs, and the building site subs and teacher assistants what we deserve.
Thank you, Ms. Brockton.
Our children deserve it.
Thank you.
Jordan?
What's the last name, Dr. Beers? Last name, please.
Sorry?
What's the last name, sir?
Barasakis.
Yes, sir.
Say that.
Tried to beat you up.
Say that again.
May we begin?
Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Jordan Paratsakis. I'm a second-year teacher at War Hill. My mother taught in this district for 19 years, and my sister for 7. My sister, brother, and I went through these very schools: DJ, Tueno, and Lafayette, and William Mary for us. I've been privy to or participated in the WJCC education for the last 21 years of my life. I am nearing 30 years old and live with my parents still. It is the only tenable way I can save for my future while living in the community that I educate. The cost of living has continued to grow in the district while wages lag. I know other teachers who live with their parents or work multiple jobs. I have seen numerous colleagues leave for New Kent and Newport News for better wages, leaving us understaffed or teetering on the brink. The best way to retain talented teachers, support staff, and the many others who keep the school operating is to approve of this pay raise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Was it Karasakis?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Beers?
I can say it now. Yeah, I got it.
Karasakis,
Thank you
yes.
so much. That is our last speaker.
All right, thank you, Dr. Beers, and thank you to all of our speakers that have taken out of your evening to come and advocate for this. We've heard you, and it'll be a part of our discussion, I'm sure. We're going to move on to item, my screen rolled away from me, item 7.2, Capital Improvement Plan for FY 24-33. Dr. Herron, if you're ready. I'll give you a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start I know this is on discussion item for the board tonight, and Ms. Ewing is going to make a short presentation before the board has an opportunity to discuss the capital improvement plan.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. During the presentation of the superintendent's CIP at the last board meeting, we shared capacity information as compared to our moderate enrollment projection. This evening, I will share all of the elementary enrollment projections, low, moderate, most likely, and high, as it compares to our fiscal year 23 effective capacity. This slide shows a comparison of our elementary school enrollment on September 30th, 2021,
enrollment was 4,725, and based on this, our projection for this school year ranged from a low of 4,671 to a high of 4,787. We actually ended up over the high projection for this year at 4,873, an overall increase of 148 elementary school students as compared to last year. In fiscal year 22, the elementary enrollment came in just above the high projection of 4,723. Effective capacity is defined as the realistic and practical number of students that the school facility can house as per this formula. Effective capacity can vary somewhat each year depending on the number of classrooms, grade levels being served, and the special education population being served at each school site. It takes into consideration the average class size for each grade level. For WJCC, our target class size for grades K through 2 is 20, grade 3 is 23, and grades 4 and 5 is 25, with the exception of James River, which has a school-wide ratio of 19:1 for all grade levels. The calculation does not take into consideration space for specialized staff to work with students, such as reading specialists or occupational and physical therapists. Once capacity of a school building gets beyond 90%, these services start taking place in makeshift spaces in hallways, closets, and corners of larger shared spaces. The next several slides will show all of our elementary enrollment projections as compared to current fiscal year 23 capacity. There will be two for each type of projection, one showing the projection with pre-K added, and one showing just the elementary projection beginning in fiscal year 26. Design funds were allocated in fiscal year 22 for pre-K centers, with construction funding anticipated in fiscal year 24, so we have adjusted the effective capacity, accounting for the pre-K classrooms becoming K2 classrooms in fiscal year 26, which can accommodate 20 students. This table shows the elementary low projected enrollment with pre-K added. Overall, we are currently at 93.5% capacity. Norge and Matthew Whaley are at 96% capacity, and Stonehouse is at 104% capacity. All elementary schools have trailers except for Matoka to assist with space needs. Trailers are not reflected in the effective capacity as they are a short-term solution to address space needs. Overall, with the low projection, the division will be just under 95% capacity in fiscal year 26 and is expected to increase each year. This chart shows the low projection beginning in fiscal year 26 when the pre-K centers would open. Overall, we will be at 85% capacity, increasing each year. Utilizing the low projection, you can see that we would not approach 90% capacity until beyond fiscal year 33. This table shows the moderate enrollment projection with pre-K added. Overall, the division will be at 96% capacity in fiscal year 25 and is expected to increase each year to 100% in fiscal year 27. This chart shows the moderate projection beginning in fiscal year 26 when the pre-K centers would open. Overall, we would be at 88% capacity, increasing slightly each year, reaching 90% capacity in fiscal year 27, the year after the pre-K centers would open. You can see there would be 4 schools over 100% capacity that first year of the pre-K centers opening. This will require redistricting to move elementary students to schools with available space. This table shows the most likely enrollment projection with pre-K added. Overall, the division will be at 97% capacity in fiscal year 25 and is expected to increase each year to 102% in fiscal year 27. This chart shows the most likely projection beginning in fiscal year 26 when the pre-K centers would open. Overall, we would be just under 90% capacity, increasing to 92% in fiscal year 27, and increasing each year, reaching 95% in fiscal year 32. This table shows the high enrollment projection with pre-K added. Overall, the division will be at 95% capacity in fiscal year 24 and at 101% in fiscal year 26. And lastly, this chart shows the high projection beginning in fiscal year 26, again when the pre-K centers would open. Overall, we would be at 91% capacity in fiscal year 26, increasing each year, reaching 95% in fiscal year 29. And that concludes my presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions or address any comments.
So this is questions related to capacity at this point, not the overall CIP. Is that correct?
I believe we presented last time, so really it's questions in general about the CIP, capacity, or general discussion of the board.
Okay. Questions from the board? Ms. Cook?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask Dr. Herron and her team, but I have a lot of remarks to make on two topics, one on the capital improvement plan in general, and then I'd like to opine on the pre-K space specifically. And just by way of background, Virginia's system is odd, it's weird. School boards don't have taxing authority, so they have to rely on local government for their capital needs, to fund their capital needs, both new facilities and maintenance. And that puts us in the position of having to ask oftentimes for what we don't get. And so, you know, I think we all acknowledge that we have excellently maintained, beautiful buildings here. They're truly excellent when you travel the state or country. Our buildings are comparatively beautiful and well maintained. And that really is because of the commitment of our local governments led by James City County. So I'm very grateful for that. But we have too few buildings. We just don't have enough facilities compared to other divisions our size. In Virginia, we're rock bottom. And additionally, our elementary schools are unusually comparatively large when we look at our neighboring divisions in particular. And we're about to add pre-K space to two of our elementary schools, thereby making those campuses even bigger. So when I look at the size of our elementary schools and the number of kids we're putting on those campuses, I really am troubled by their size. I believe if you look at the numbers, it's clear we need a new elementary school, and that's not based on projections. Projections are really almost irrelevant to this conversation. It's based on past growth. Right now we have kids, enough kids in the trailer, nearly enough kids in trailers every day that would justify a new elementary school. That's the equivalent of the size of our smaller elementary schools. So to put us in position of normal operations where kids get the services they need in the spaces that they deserve and that their teachers deserve, we need a school. We need one now. We need one yesterday. So before I go on, I guess, Dr. Herron, I'd like to ask you if you could just kind of walk the public through the timeline of when we first started to ask for a school and, you know, when you first put it in the CIP and in what year, and then kind of what has happened since, when that converted from an agreed elementary school to now where we are with pre-K space. Could you just remind us, please?
Yes, it's been a pretty long and complicated road to where we are today. I had actually looked at this history fairly recently, several weeks ago, just to get a sense myself of where we were in the whole picture. Elementary school design was first in the CIP in fiscal year 27. Just the design, it was in the 10th year of the CIP at that time, fiscal year 18 to 27. Fiscal year 19 through 28, the next year, the design was in the 9th year, the school was in the 10th year. In fiscal year 20 to 29, that was the year that we really started to look at the numbers. We had just got a middle school, we'd opened a middle school, and we started to really look at all the other areas of the school division. In that year, we actually escalated the need right up to fiscal year 20, design and with construction in fiscal year 21. At that point in time, the design was 3.5 million. The cost of the school was 35 million. Our funding partners shifted the design back to fiscal year 23 and construction to 24, so it was still within the 5-year plan at that moment in time with our funding partners. The next fiscal year, 21 through 30, the new elementary school design was moved back to 23 the year before, so the school board put the design back in 21, and this construction in 22. And preschool space was added as a need in fiscal year 26 in the out years at that moment in time. Our funding partners that year shifted the new elementary school design and construction outside of the 5-year plan and moved the preschool space design to fiscal year 23 and preschool construction to 24, signaling their desire and possibility of funding preschool space. Fiscal year 22 to 31, the new elementary school design was again put in fiscal year 24 with construction in 25, and preschool space was not in the school division CIP. And again, the elementary school was taken from the CIP by our funding partners, was not placed in the plan. Currently, fiscal year 23 to 32 last year, pre-K through 5 space was put in the plan by the school board in fiscal year 23, and pre-K through 5 space construction was put in fiscal year 24. The design was put in 22 for preschool through 5 space in fiscal year 22 by our funding partners, and 24 for construction. This current year, fiscal year 24 through 33, pre-K 5 space design was in 23, pre-K through 5 space construction was in 24, and we have re-put in the elementary school in fiscal year 27 with construction in 28. It's a long history, going backwards and forwards over many years.
So that's pretty complex, but I think if I understood you correctly, a few years ago, 3 years ago, a new elementary school was in our 5-year CIP that was approved by the local governments, and it would have cost $35 million. And today we find ourselves in a situation where nothing has been built. Design is underway for pre-K space, but the elementary school and pre-K space have been flipped, driven by the local governments. But a few years ago, we were all in agreement that we needed an elementary school, and 2 years ago that changed. Is that correct?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. And so I guess that's the crux of why I'm struggling with this, and I don't think I can support moving forward with the CIP as it's presented, because I believe we need to put the elementary school first. James City County has been very clear with us that they will support pre-K space, at least with the amount that they've adopted, which is significantly lower than what we are looking at now. And they've made it really clear that if we ask for an elementary school now, that we'd be essentially kicking the can down the road. And I understand that, so it makes logical sense to move forward and pragmatic sense to move forward with what we've been offered, even though it's not what we believe we need. But going forward in that pragmatic way for me brings up questions. Do we move forward with what we can get just because we can get it, even if it's not ideal? Or do we ask for what we believe we need so the historical record indicates that? And then we can get an alternative and accept it graciously, right? I mean, it's just the way Virginia's set up. I don't think we should preemptively ask for what we believe we can get, even though we don't believe it's what's best for kids. So that's what I'm really struggling with, and it's a quandary, but I think we need to be transparent to the community that we need a school inclusive of pre-K space, not just pre-K space, and that we need to ask for what our educational leaders have told us that they need. We need to ask for what this body has agreed to in the past in partnership with the local governments, and I think supporting anything else isn't what I'm in this chair to do. I want to vote for an elementary school first, and then accept graciously what we're given. I think doing anything else isn't conveying an honest representation to the community, and I'm struggling with what message that sends to all those elementary school teachers and leaders who are living this every day. We heard from some of them today. And so I think we need to send a clear message to those people and to the community and to our funders that that's what we need. And I recognize it's hard, but I just want to go on the record that that's what we need, and that's what we've all agreed to in the past. And that narrative was switched on us, which then segues nicely into what I want to talk about with pre-K. Another issue that I'm really struggling with process-wise, currently there are approximately 200 special education kids enrolled in Bright Beginnings. And when Bright Beginnings started, it was a mixed, an inclusion model that ideally was 50-50, 50% SPED and 50% at risk. And so based on that model, we would need approximately 400 seats for Bright Beginnings right now, which is roughly 60 more than we have. We're asking or proposing to build 500 seats. And I guess an extra 100 seats would allow for growth that may or may not be the right number. Maybe it seems within reason, but it is a 20% growth above where we should be today if we were doing a 50-50 inclusion model. And we're building that number driven by what's available with the land and what our architects and engineers say we can build, although the original idea was to build 700 seats, or 650 seats, I believe, which is the larger number that was suggested by ANLAR. And to be clear, I support universal pre-K. I support more pre-K. I believe in it. But I'm not sure that that should be universally delivered by public education or by WJCC. And I've said this a number of times, and I'll continue to say it. I don't think we've had a conversation as a board or as a community about expanding pre-K in this community beyond our original model, right? And so, so our original model would get us at 400 seats. And so expanding to reach our model has implications even that we have yet to discuss thoroughly and publicly. We've had the conversation about space, but not programs. And I'm troubled by this because it has significant financial implications for our school division. Pre-K is largely locally funded, and there's a long-term operation costs, and also impacts other public providers and other private providers. And I don't think we've internalized and discussed as a community that impact. So again, I'm all for pre-K, and I'd love to see universal pre-K exist, but we need to figure that out as a community, and I don't think we have had that conversation. So moving forward with 500 pre-K spaces, I think, is premature. Yep, we're going to do it anyway because we need the space, which we do, but I'm just frustrated by, I think we've done this backwards, and I don't think we've done it transparently, and I'm concerned about the programmatic implications both externally and internally. And so anyway, for that, I'm very troubled, and I'm just going to struggle to support this CIP. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Other comments? Ms. Ortega?
Well, is this the time to have that discussion? That
Yes.
Ms. Cook? Okay.
Thank you.
So, I mean, that was a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot.
I have a lot of questions brewing. Just first, since you're addressing the number of pre-K seats, because initially we were at 650. I believe that was the superintendent's recommendation. What was that recommendation based on?
That recommendation was based on the ANLAR report that all three bodies authorized to have done and was presented to all three the governing bodies and ourselves. And in that report, the number 650 was put forward as the need for that number of spaces for pre-K in our community. And so we took that as a number to begin the conversation.
So pre-K, but not necessarily just SPED and at-risk beyond those two groups? Or was that the anticipated growth of those two groups?
It's inclusive of all students.
Okay.
A mixture of pre-K and Bright Beginnings.
Yes, same thing, yes.
But is pre-K and Bright Beginnings the same thing?
Here, but there's also Head Start in the community and other private providers. So we haven't had that conversation as a community. We just proposed unilaterally expanding into that space, which I'm not sure was the right choice.
So, Ms. Ortego, to follow along with your question, to offer a little bit more context to those that are watching and maybe having trouble remembering those meetings last year, with that report, there were 3 recommendations on how you get to 650, and the board agreed, a majority of the board agreed that the recommendation that we would take up would be looking at 3 attached wings to elementary schools. Couldn't get there because the architects could not find 3 schools that we would be able to build attachments to based on space needs.
Right. I'm just struggling with the feeling, and I realize that this is, haven't even completed a full year on this board, but I was paying attention last year, and I've been paying attention all year, and I'm frustrated by the feeling of having been walked in a circle and ending up in a worse place than we started when we were all trying to be responsible. And so I'm not quite sure what to do with that feeling. I don't know that have we seen numbers shifted around of hypothetical redistricting possibilities that we could compare with new construction?
We have not talked about redistricting because we don't have space to use right now. Most of our schools they're full right now because pre-K are in our buildings, so we are at capacity.
But assuming the 500 pre-K seats.
400 seats would come out of our current elementary schools, and at that point, if we don't have a new elementary school, we would be redistricting our elementary students to fill the spaces that pre-K or Bright Beginning students would vacate.
Right. And have we run through that exercise just even on paper, number-wise, where that would shift, and what?
We don't do the redistricting ourselves. We bring in someone to look at neighborhoods, to look at numbers, to actually make recommendations as to how the schools would be redistricted. We actually usually employ someone to do that for us and bring options to the board.
But is it fair to say it would include all 9 elementary schools?
Potentially, yes. Right. It'd be hard to imagine a scenario where it wouldn't, because we'd be trying to fill every space. But our biggest challenge is our elementary school numbers have grown dramatically in 2 years. And so with students in trailers and the number of students still growing, by the time we build the pre-K space, we are almost in need of another elementary school.
And then just to play devil's advocate, you are saying we should ask for the school and accept graciously what comes back.
I don't think you were calling Ms. Cook the devil, by the way.
Oh, no.
just being funny, humorous. Sorry.
Okay. No, is that not what we're doing by accepting the preschool wings?
Well, but I think if we go on record right now saying we want the 2 preschool wings, that's saying that our request to the way it works is you ask, and then they tell you what they'll fund, and then you adopt the final CIP. So at this stage, with our request, I think we need to ask for an elementary school, because we have less than 400 Bright Beginnings kids right now. If we had the 50-50 mixed inclusion model, we would have more like 400 kids. So we're building an extra 100 seats
that we might not be able to fill with.
Well, I'm sure we'll be able to fill. We have more than enough waiting list, right?
Not with
But
elementary
that's
school
not
kids.
helping us with our elementary school needs. So that's why I think we're doing it backwards, and I think we're doing it for the wrong reasons without having had the conversation programmatically about the impact on, I mean, this board hasn't taken a vote on the number of bright beginning seats it wants to offer, right? We're coming at it backwards. So that's why I'm struggling with this process. And, you know, a few years ago, we had this community, the funders and this board agreed we needed a new elementary school. And because there was, I don't want to say why, but it got flipped and like, well, no, we'll build a pre-K space. And so then we started talking about it from a facilities perspective instead of a programmatic perspective. And we need to have that whole conversation. Again, if you look at the numbers, so I'm just not comfortable moving forward. I understand the pragmatic way to move forward. James City County has been crystal clear about it, to their credit. But I think I'm in this chair to ask for what I think this division needs. And this is something that school boards all over this state struggle with. There's an article in today's paper about Albemarle doing the same thing. And, you know, their school board struggling with their funding body about high school renovations. And so it's a very common tension, but I think our job is to ask for what we think our kids and our students need and do that respectfully.
Ms. Orgo, do you have more? Okay.
Not at the moment.
Yes?
No, not at
No?
the moment.
Dr. Beers?
I agree with Mrs. Ortega. Step round and around. I'd probably say we've been doing an awful lot of back and forth, and we're looking at years now. Stuff was put in years ago, and then it was taken out, and then it was put back in again, and I know we reached a point, either last year or the year before, we decided that, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but this is all, looks like this is all we're going to get. So let's go for this now. It's short term. And then the county wants more data. And it's just, it is really, it's like I can't get a straight answer. Or I get an answer, and then 6 months later, I get another answer. And
4
it's
weeks
just,
later, the price doubles. Yeah.
And the other thing is we all agreed on the trigger points, and it's like we're just going to ignore all those. And they agreed. I remember when we had that conversation of when, you know, what was the percentage where we became aware, or that, okay, we've got to start thinking about this, and then what was the percentage where, okay, that's the trigger where we start to design. We did that, and so yeah, Mrs. Cook, it's like I'm with you, except I don't want to go through that again. You know, it's like if we can get the preschool now, let's get it. We're not totally happy. We really do need elementary school. But if that's all we're going to get, then that's all we're going to get. And people don't always understand that. It's like, we don't have the money. And we have to convince the Board of Supervisors that this is what we need and why we need it, and this is how much it's going to cost. So I don't know, you know, I guess I don't know where we are right now.
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out.
We are?
Ms. Young?
Right, I'm, Renee, Ms. Ewing, I'm sorry, could you please direct me back on the capacity charts that I should be looking at to which one of these charts has to do for after preschool space has been built? Which one of these charts applies at that point?
Which projection would you like to look at? The low projection?
I think let's look at the low projection first.
Projection?
Okay, low. But all of these charts that you've given us, I know it's low, moderate, most likely, high. But which one of these, after preschool space has been built?
That which slide is
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll notice there's actually a cutoff in years where you see the numbers changing and the capacity of the school changes because programmatically the rooms will hold more students. So you'll see capacity going up and then it starts at a certain year as opposed to all 10 years.
Right, I'd see that.
So that's your pre-K in place and the need for an elementary school.
Yeah, maybe to answer Ms. Young's question a different way, perhaps she's asking why it's put on the CIP in years 27, 28.
No, I wasn't asking that
No?
question.
Okay.
I'm way in front of that in
Good.
my thinking.
Okay.
Because one of the things that when I hear my colleagues talking about, one of the things that I've noticed about schools is we're always playing catch up. About the time you get a new elementary school built, it's full, and then you're fighting for the next one. And I'm very happy about the preschool space. I've always been in support of that. I don't necessarily think it's backwards. I think one of the things that Ms. Cook talked about, we haven't talked about programs. I think that's super legitimate. We've never talked about that. We've always talked about space. We haven't talked about the needs of individual programs, and we haven't had that discussion, which I think is one that we should be having, because one of the things that has always bothered me when I go in our schools and I see teachers with curtains across doors because it was a hallway and they put a curtain across it so that they have a little bit of privacy if they're doing speech therapy or whatever. That isn't ideal for students. I've worked in schools where hallways, pretty much even fire exits, you have to be very careful about fire exits, were used for programs, kids bringing things to teachers to work on and then leaving. I don't like that. I think teachers deserve their own space so that students can be served. And I think that discussion about programs is one that we truly need to have. And I think we're late having it. And so that's all I really have to say, but I do think we need to talk about the needs of individual programs. And Dr. Heron, I would ask that, I understand all the numbers, I've seen them for years, but that doesn't reflect the true needs of what necessarily needs to happen within a school building. I mean, I've taught in schools, I've seen the curtains drawn across. I've also taught in buildings where speech therapists had their own space and special programs had their own space, and that's the discussion we haven't had.
Ms. Hummel and then Ms. Hundley.
So, thanks very much, Mrs. Cook, for just bringing this out all on the table for this kind of discussion. When I look at this, I see that we are dealing with the superintendent's proposed capital improvement plan. And so what I'm hearing you saying is that the superintendent's proposed capital improvement plan that we are all looking at is one that you would be hoping would be more of a CIP of recognized need rather than capitulating to what the reality is. So are we as a board...
You're getting ahead of my question.
Okay.
So go for it.
So are we as a board asking our superintendent to give us a proposed CIP of our needs and then go back to the drawing board, have a superintendent's proposed CIP be one that she honestly, truly believes is in the best interest of our school system, and then present that to our funding partners for their review and whatever fallout comes.
And rejection, yeah.
So you framed it how you would frame it. I'm okay with that. I will ask that, but I want to get to Ms. Hundley.
So I guess I'm torn because I'm one of those people that want it all. I think we need both.
We need universal preschools, and we need a new elementary school. Our schools are overcrowded, and when I was elected to this seat, I ran on smaller class size. We cannot deliver smaller class size to help with catching kids up from the pandemic when we have schools that are overcrowded. I worked in this division 26 years before I sat in this seat, and we needed an elementary school, we built it. And we need another one, we need to build it. And it's just hard for me to try to understand, living in this community, why it seems easy. And we just don't have the funding for it. It makes no sense to me. I still get my kid fix. I work on the side with several private preschools, and they have waiting lists. And they'll call around, and they've called to every preschool in Williamsburg, and they're waiting. So we have kids out there that aren't just with special needs, that don't have placement in preschools here. I don't know why we don't have pop-up preschools in every housing area, and we need them. So we're not only are we're missing kids, and then they're coming to us because they haven't been in a qualified preschool, and then they come in behind, and then they come into a school that's overcrowded. And so we need both, and that's where I'm torn. And I don't, it's just hard for me to sit here and understand why we can't meet the needs of the overcrowding. There's no way we can catch kids up and people up when schools are overcrowded.
Ms. Cook, you wanted to address something?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that if we build 500 pre-K seats, we're not relieving the elementary schools of 500.
400. It would be 400.
It would be 341.
Okay.
So we would make space for 500 pre-K, which we're not serving now, and we might fill, but only 341 pre-K kids will be vacating the elementary school. So we're not, that's fewer kids than we have in the trailers. Right? And so I just want to throw that out there. Again, back to Julie, I don't know that I love the term capitulate. I would say compromise.
Sorry.
I mean, so do we pragmatically compromise now or in May when this is finalized? And for me, it's about what I've been put in this chair to do and what the historical record is. So that's what's forefront for me. If I compromise now, again, the county has been crystal clear about what they're willing to do, and they are the deciders. But if I take that vote and say, yes, I support that, that is saying to all those teachers and to the community that's what I think we need. And I don't think that. And so that's what I'm struggling with.
Ms. Ortega, before I have a moment.
Just a practical question. Do we anticipate being able to staff a new elementary school and new preschool space? Because you can't have smaller class sizes if you don't have more staff, even if you have rooms.
I mean, I think staffing any school is going to continue to be challenging over the next several years, but we have delivered on 99-point-something% this year. Honestly, I think it'll come down to how we compensate our staff this year, and the year after, and the year after that, and how we treat our staff and value our staff as well as compensation and other things. So it really depends. I can't guarantee being fully staffed next year. I can't guarantee new teachers coming to our area, but certainly they have in the past, and they know it's a great place to work.
Okay. So thank you for the great conversation around the CIP and around projected enrollment at the elementary level. I'm just going to share that I am ready to support the superintendent's recommended CIP. I'm ready to do that because the superintendent CIP is exactly what we have asked for. So when this AMLA report came out and the options were presented to us, and then we went to an architect and said, what could you give us, you know? And then we went to our board of supervisors and our city council and at joint meetings, and we had real honest conversation about what they were not willing to entertain and what they were willing to entertain. And then we came back as a board and we said, this is what we want to do. And so with respect, Ms. Cook, we did ask for this. This is what we asked for, and I do disagree that this is out of sync, that it absolutely needs to be an elementary school before these wings, these preschool spaces, but that's a matter of perspective. I share your perspective, Ms. Ortego, that, as you say, you feel like you've kind of been walked in a circle. I came in with that conversation already, you know, being had, and trying to find my place in it and find out, you know, what's real, what's genuine, what's disingenuine, what's right for the school division, what's right for our students. And I've got children, you know, at Norge, you know, and I've got children now at Stonehouse. One of my new children at Stonehouse, the first thing she said was, coming from a neighboring region, the first thing she said when she came home from school was, "There's 1,000 kids in my class." I said, well, there it is, out of the mouths of babes. But having felt like, you know, being walked in a circle in this conversation, and now coming to this point where we can create needed space. We can create that needed space tomorrow and not 5 years down the road. And by the way, this is something this board almost unanimously agreed that this was a direction we wanted to take, and we took that to our board of supervisors. They weighed it, they consider it, they asked us for modification, we entertained that modification. They've even gone to the point of purchasing land next to a potential site to make this happen. So I'm really concerned that if we backtrack now, we're not getting any space. That's the real concern that I have. We get nothing if we backtrack now. And so I'm ready to support the superintendent's recommended CIP because this is what we asked for. And if we don't create space for our kids. So Ms. Hummel has framed it really well, and the question is, are the board ready to support Dr. Herron's recommended CIP? And if a majority of the board is not ready to support this CIP, then we're telling Dr. Herron go back to the drawing board. But we're also signaling some other things as well. Go ahead, Dr. Herron.
Mr. Chair, if I could just have a moment, I would like to make it obvious for the listening public as well. There is pre-K space, but there is also an elementary school within the 5-year plan that we added this year and is in the proposed CIP. We actually need both.
Yeah.
There's no question about it, and we need both within a certain amount of time. And so the orders may not be perfect for many of the board members, but they both need to be kept in the plan.
And I support that because, and that's a part of the CIP, because we are a growing community. I live up in the north end of the community, and there's more development that I was just shocked to see happening. And so it's more families, so the numbers, they're going to look very different in 3 to 4 years.
The only thing I would add to that is the decision to create dedicated preschool space was an external one, not an internal one. I just want to be clear about that.
So I do want to begin with Ms. Ortego, and we'll just go around the horn and just get a sense of what support we have for this CIP recommendation from the superintendent.
At the moment, I'm inclined to support the superintendent's current CIP.
Thank you, Ms. Ortego. Ms. Huntley?
I'm going to support the superintendent's recommendation.
Ms. Cook?
Don't know.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hummel?
Because it's the superintendent's proposed capital improvement plan, and I, generally speaking, will defer to our superintendent in the way that she, if it's based on compromise or not, as a school board member, I typically, and my votes have almost always, if not always, aligned with supporting what the superintendent wants. I will be supporting her proposed capital improvement plan, even if I do kind of resent the amount of back and forth that, as I've been on the school board for 7 years, I've seen it seemingly that this school board is not driving what the educational needs are for our children, but sometimes we are just on the receiving end of what our funding partners are willing to pay. So.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Ms. Young?
I will support the superintendent's CIP.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Dr. Beers?
I support the superintendent's CIP proposal.
Thank you, Dr. Beers. In the weeks ahead, please do communicate any further questions to Dr. Heron or myself, and we'll try to field those questions. We're going to move on to item 8, our proposed agenda item, review award of contract for door locking system upgrades. Dr. Heron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Keever is going to present this item this evening, and it's a response to our threat and vulnerability assessment. Mr. Keever.
Thank you, Dr. Heron. Good evening, members of the school board. The agenda item this evening is to help put you in a position when you get back together again in December to review and support and approve a contract that will allow the school division to move forward with some door lock upgrades. In closed session over the course of the last few months, we have presented evidence and information from the threat risk vulnerability assessment that was completed. There were a number of kudos that came from that assessment, and there were some suggestions for how we can continue to improve as a school division. We will be bringing to you over the course of the next several months, based on the year-end spending plan that was approved by the funding partners, specific items that we wish to address. And without getting into too much detail on this particular project, I did want to set that context for you. It would be our goal that every one of our schools benefits from this particular contract item that we'll bring forward to you. I'm happy to try to address questions, but do want to try to leave some of the specifics out relative to safety and security.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Just one question. We're talking about all doors, I imagine. Don't answer it. It's okay. It's okay. Thought I'd get away with one. It's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Keever. We'll move on to item 9.1, review of revisions to policy IIA instructional materials. I think I want to kick this over to our policy committee, Ms. Hummel and Ms. Young. Do you want to lead off on this conversation?
Ms. Young, do you want to go? Do you want me to? What do you?
Oh, I'm still trying to get to where we need to be.
It's on 111A.
Right. No, I have it here, but
Okay.
I have like 4 different things here.
Okay.
Mr. Keever, on both of these policies, are they here? You're going to present the first one?
Would be happy to talk about the first
and then
policy.
the one that I asked to be proposed? Or how is this going to be presented?
Ms. Young, we administratively would intend to present IIA as it's currently written in board docs as we discussed at the committee meeting. And then the board can determine where to go from there.
Okay.
Does that mean that there are 2 versions that we should see?
There are 2 versions. The one that I agreed to have you present, but I asked that both of them be presented. So are you asking me to present the second one?
No, ma'am. I think my recollection of that conversation was that we would bring forward administratively the policy that was in board docs that we talked about on that particular day, November the 3rd, that we would get legal review of 2 specific sentences that you were interested in potentially bringing forward.
Yes.
I would come back to you via email, let you know what the attorney said, which I think was at the end of last week that I did that, and that this evening we would start as the basis with IIA as written and suggested by administration and revise from the initial version that we shared with the board in committee. And then if the board, through conversation, wished to look at the 2 sentences that you wanted to bring forward, that would emerge during the discussion from the board.
Okay.
So can I ask a question? It sounds like within the committee's work, it sounds to me that Ms. Hummel and Ms. Young were not in agreement and wanted to bring the conversation to the board. Is that right?
Right. Well, first of all, is it okay if I just jump in there, Julie? The first policy that we received from VSBA, it contained language that I personally found objectionable. I did not want that in our policy book. I was pretty disgusted with it, and I don't use that word lightly. I don't think I've ever used that word before on the school board. And Ms. Hummel actually agreed. We did not want that language presented as something that we agree with as a school board. And so went back to Dr. Heron. Dr. Heron worked with senior leadership, and they came up with the current policy that we have here. Have I represented that correctly?
Yes.
So if people are interested and want to know what the Code of Virginia is, they can also go and look there. And then the second thing that happened is that I took a look at it, and I looked at the information that we received from the Virginia Department of Education, their model policy, and one of the things that there was four, and I don't have them in front of me and they're not on here, 4 guiding principles that were sent down from the Virginia Department of Education that referred to the rights of parents. And I want that statement in our policy for number one, because when we're talking about sexually explicit material that is to be presented to children, I want parents to absolutely know that we support their rights. And that's why I would like that one sentence that I guess Pack, the lawyer, had suggested, which stated the Code of Virginia, just added to it.
Did you want to bring that sentence up?
Okay, I'd have to go to my. It's on my phone.
Here it is, right here.
Say that again. Just a second. Miss Oreo, did you have something?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we're at the discussion point yet or not.
That we're still getting an update.
Okay, the sentence that I asked to have, I mean, we can look at I don't know if we should look at the revised version first, or if I should go ahead and read the sentence I wanted added.
Do we have both versions that we can see?
No, because her version, what she is proposing is 2 sentences that go into the.
It was emailed to all of us, so we could all pull it up and read it.
No, it's not the one that was emailed to all of us.
Huh?
No. No, because we just talked about it in policy. It's an update from that one.
So as such,
we haven't even discussed that one yet. We haven't discussed the sentences.
No, and that's
that were emailed to all of us.
Okay, well, why don't we go back and let's discuss the revised version that's on, and here, Julie. And then thank you for bringing that up. Oops. No, I guess I can.
So am I to understand that there's a policy revision that you both agreed on, and then there was additional language, Ms. Young, that you wanted included?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is the additional language lengthy?
No.
Okay. Can you share with us what that additional language is as we go through the revised portion that's in board docs?
Right. We can. Yes.
Okay.
Would it help if I helped?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm not sure.
So I'm looking at the line numbered version of IIA, which is in board docs.
Okay.
And I'm starting there. The additions in order to meet the Virginia Code requirements really begin on line 27, which is greened in through, let me just make sure I'm correct here, through line 53, and then pick back up again on 57 through 73. Right. The material that's in black on the line version is currently in IIA, which this board took up and approved revisions to in August of 2022. These additional revisions are in response to the Senate bill and the governor signing off on that Senate bill that required specific information on sexually explicit content. the information that Ms. Young asked to have vetted through the attorney, initially she felt like it ought to go after the second paragraph. So if you look under line 25, the specific sentences that she shared when the attorney reviewed that felt like if the board so chose, the board might want to consider a sentence similar to this. Consistent with Virginia Code 1-240.1, the school board acknowledges each parent has a fundamental right to make decisions concerning the upbringing, education, and care of the parent's child.
I'm writing, because I'm not sure.
I understand.
Else is. Can
So
from acknowledges?
Yes, sir. So, so in essence, it's the direct code citation, Virginia Code. The school board acknowledges each parent has a fundamental right to make decisions concerning the upbringing, education, and care of the parent's child. When Ms. Young and the committee, Ms. Hummel, myself, Ms. Ford talked through the policy pieces, there was consensus around the policy as presented, IIA, with the request that we ask the attorney their opinion on two sentences that Ms. Young had provided. The attorney came back and said, it appears that the intent is to do this. If that is the intent, then I would recommend the sentence that I just read for you.
Would it be okay if I forwarded that exact verbiage to our board?
I think that's appropriate.
Because we're in the discussion phase right now?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I hate to ask you to multitask, but Ms. Hummel, could you give us your perspective on why you didn't feel that should be included?
So I thought, it was my opinion that what we see in the green line that came from the superintendent and the administration was fine with me. I was fine with it and didn't think we needed any additional information, but I certainly respected my colleagues' desire to be able to bring it up for general discussion. If I do just school board members, does that work now?
Yeah, I hope so.
Not for me. It hasn't.
Okay.
And
That's good.
so in version 1 that Ms. Hummel and Ms. Young found something objectionable embedded in that, the attorney was fine with that original change, correct? Which was inconsistent with the VSBA model policy, is that correct?
Let's back up. So version 1, which was initially presented to committee, was the VSBA model policy that included definitions specifically around some of the sexually explicit content parameters.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was legally sufficient. That was appropriate from our attorney's perspective and VSBA's perspective relative to meeting the requirements that the board adopt a policy prior to January 1st.
Right.
So we went through the committee process, through some additional conversations with the superintendent. We were asked to review that because there were concerns about the directness of the definitions that were provided. We came off the agenda for the first meeting in November for the board to review so that we could refine the language. We came back with refined language to the committee, and that refined language, again, legally sufficient, simply includes 3 definitions and a reference to code should somebody wish to go and probe more deeply on the other definitions. Again, this one deemed legally sufficient as well by our council. And what I think you're looking at in board docs right now is what administratively we are bringing forward to you based on the policy committee meeting without the additional sentence that Ms. Young has asked this body to consider.
And
Can we know what that is?
That sentence?
I just forwarded it
It's just
to you.
emailed to you. It's
just-
not the blue line. It's
the
it says,
black line.
Yeah, it says PAC offered.
The PAC. It's the bolded
Yeah.
black.
So if you pull up that email, you'll see PAC offered, and then there's that sentences, the 2 sentences that he's included. A parent has a fundamental right to make decisions concerning the upbringing, education, and care of the parent's child, and that's in quotes. If that is the case, I suggest using the actual language from the code, and that's just more information from the attorney.
So can you help us understand the pros and cons of including this sentence in this policy?
I think the pros and cons would be something that the board would want to talk through. We felt administratively as though the policy as presented to the committee was appropriate, was sound, and provided information to parents on their rights and opportunities relative to understanding what this material is and potentially opting their student out of that material. That's administratively our position.
Thank you for helping us get through this, and thank you to our policy committee members for really taking this task seriously and bringing it to our attention as well. I just want to say, me personally, I don't have a issue including the language, and really because I'm looking at KAB, family engagement, a policy that was adopted November 16, 2021, not too long ago, a year ago. Very, very similar to what our attorney has given us to include if we chose to do that. Williamsburg-James City County Schools recognizes the vital role families have in supporting students' academic and personal success. As such, schools will create a welcome environment where parents and guardians are encouraged to engage as a partner in their child's learning and participate in school-related activities as appropriate. Through successful school-home relationships, the division endeavors to provide all families with resources and strategies that reduce barriers and extend learning beyond the classroom. So this is a little tighter, a little neater, maybe a little bit more specific to this new policy, but
One of the reasons that I felt, especially for this policy specifically, because it deals with sexually explicit material, I think it behooves us to state that we recognize a parent's rights in these issues, and that's why I would like that sentence in there, because the intent of the the model that came down from the Virginia Department of Education cited four guiding principles, and they all had to do with the rights of parents, and I would like that sentence included in this if my colleagues would agree that it's appropriate.
So thank you for the information. What is that? Baseball. What am I trying to say? Behind baseball, whatever it's called. Inside baseball. I'm not a baseball fan. Any questions for our policy committee?
Yeah, I know this is time sensitive.
Ms. Ortega.
I know this is time sensitive, and we have to take action on it at the next meeting to be compliant with the law. But I would appreciate getting the attorney to opine on. I'd just like to. I mean, I don't think I have a problem with it, but if it wasn't not included because, to Mr. Dow's point, it's redundant because it's somewhere else, and then in which case, to Mrs. Young's point, doesn't do any harm to include it. I just would like to just understand. So if we could get some more depth of understanding there.
The attorneys told us we may, right?
May, yeah. But yeah, I would just like to understand.
I guess for me is, I don't feel particularly strongly one way or the other. If including what our lawyer has said would be fine, including those 2 sentences, and it's somehow, I have no real objection. Just as normal protocol, I follow what the administration typically recommends, because they're the ones that have to actually deal with the administration and implementation of it.
Right.
So I guess the big question would be, is there anything that would, in the inclusion of those 2 sentences, that would cause any extra burden on the administration or our teachers to include those 2 sentences?
We don't believe that would create an additional burden. We also feel like the rights of parents are captured within the
Right.
language here and other policies as well, but the policy decision is that driven by the board.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that the attorney said that is because it's absolutely your right to add that language, and I don't think we see an administrative burden if that language is added.
Sort of go.
So I support the addition of the language. I think what Mrs. Young was trying to do is capture the essence of the VDOE model policy and the guiding principles that are listed in it, which are very clear. For example, each parent has the right to make decisions concerning their child's education in accordance with their customs, faith, and values. Additionally, local school boards should develop policies that provide parents the opportunity to change their decision by providing notice to school. So that part is in our policy. I think what Mrs. Young was trying to do was make a statement as a board saying, we understand the reason that we're even bringing this, we understand the reason behind the model policy to begin with, and we as responsible adults making decisions for children whose parents ultimately have the right to decide what they're exposed to, acknowledge that. And I don't understand why having a statement that reflects the entire reason that this was even put forth is a problem. But I'm open to hearing the answer if someone has one.
Yes, are there any other comments related to including or not including? Go, Ms.
Yeah,
Curtis.
and I don't think I have a problem with it, but I'm just reading this email for the first time, and it said, PAC offered this advice in terms of the sentences, should the board wish to go this direction. And I'm like, which direction? Like, I just...
No,
yeah.
for sure, we can, if you're saying we should take it up next time instead of tonight, is that what you're saying? Because it's supposed to come up tonight.
I don't think so, no.
I thought it was under action items.
No, we're discussing it.
No,
it's
the reason I think he's got that is because before that, if you look at the two sentences that I came up with that I wanted to include, I think he decided that the code covered those.
Okay.
Oh, no, you know what?
That's the way I'm
mixed up
reading it.
IAA and II.
I mean, I think that was the intent of the lawyer, was that.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to delay anything.
Decided that by citing the code, it covered the two sentences that I wanted in, which the two sentences that I had come up with.
Yeah.
Referred back to the Virginia Department of Education model policy and their 4 guiding principles. And what he did, I believe, and you can correct me
I think you're
if
right.
I'm
I think,
wrong.
Ms. Rang, I think you're exactly right, that he felt like if the board wanted to include language like this, it ought to be the specific code language that's consistent with code 1-240.1, the school board acknowledges.
Similar to what we
So
asked
that's
for with
the
the
direction.
definitions. Similar to what we asked for with the definitions. We've got code
Did he have
section.
did he have a specific reason, though?
Because we asked for his opinion on whether it would be legally sufficient to add those, legally appropriate to add those 2 sentences to the policy that he had already signed off on. He is saying the board can add whatever language they wish to add to policy.
So why that language versus what Ms. Young initially proposed, I guess?
I think he feels like the code citation is more specific to the rights of parents. And if the goal is to speak to the rights of parents, you ought to use the Virginia code citation that is entitled Rights of Parents. That's his perspective.
Okay, but for the record, the school board can put into the policy whatever they want? Whatever they agree on.
The attorney gives us a recommendation. It's up to us to adopt that recommendation or go a different direction, and that's happened.
But I would always say, after 7 years, it's a good idea to follow what our lawyers recommend.
And school boards who don't tend to be in protracted legal battles.
So I'm not yet hearing that there is a different
Oh, no.
sentence or two, and I don't think that's what Ms. Ortego is getting at. But if we can get back to that, these 2 sentences, is there support or not for including these 2 sentences in the revised policy IIA? Yep, IIA. Ms. Hunley, what do you think?
I believe parents have a right to whatever. I mean,
The code.
I always thought they did, so it was confusing to me that they didn't, to tell you the truth. So, yes, I believe,
It needs to be stated in this policy?
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hunley. Ms. Cook?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand. Yeah. Okay.
Ms. Hummel?
Yeah, it's fine. I have no objections.
Definitely.
I know how Ms. Young feels. Dr. Beers?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that I know with other policies, when issues like this have come up, we have put that citation in the body and the reference goes to the regs. We didn't add additional language. And so it's okay, it's redundant. I don't, if you want to do that, do it. It's not a big deal to me, but I just know that with other policies, we have not added additional language. We simply cited that regulation that pertained to whatever that policy was. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Beers. So I find myself willing to include or support including these two sentences that the attorney has given us. So I'll read these again.
It's,
Go ahead.
I think it's one sentence.
Yeah. Was it one?
It is a sentence.
Yeah, it is a sentence.
One sentence.
I think it's two. Does it not just, well, he's got a period after child.
No. He's saying if that is the case, I suggest using the actual language from the code,
Such as?
Okay.
consistent with Virginia Code 1-240.1. The school board acknowledges each parent has a fundamental right to make decisions concerning the upbringing, education, and care of the parent's child.
Thank you for helping me. You're absolutely right. One
And
sentence.
For clarity, that Ms. Young was requesting that to come after the current paragraph 2. So somewhere in the neighborhood of line 26, this sentence would be added. The rest of the policy would shift down a line, and we would bring that to the board for approval in December.
That's what we want. Yes, sir.
Did we capture that correctly?
That's it.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Keever. Appreciate it.
All right.
Before I exit,
Yes.
there is a second policy revision that needs to occur in order to continue our efforts at being in compliance with code, and it's a follow along. It's IIAB, and it merely suggests the teachers follow the superintendent's procedures as required by policy IIA.
I
I don't think we have any trouble with that, Ms. Ortega?
just have one clarifying comment in looking at the initial policy, the IIA.
Ms. Ortega, I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just an additional clarifying comment, just so we're clear and the public is clear. Instructional material as defined in this policy does not include library material that is not specifically assigned. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct.
So this does not refer to library books at all, as it stands?
Well,
Unless it's assigned by a teacher, unless, these stipulations.
that is an accurate review. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions regarding IIAB? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You made that easy. Sean?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this is a good place to insert it, but Ms. Ortega brings up a very good point about library materials. We haven't spoken about library materials. I have to ask Dr. Herron about it. And I think it did come up in a meeting about sexually explicit materials in our libraries, but we haven't really addressed any policy concerning that.
Did you have a policy in mind, Ms. Young?
I guess we could go to VSBA and ask them to come up with one, or we could maybe talk about whether or not we even felt it was necessary. But personally, with some of the materials that are coming out and that children are having access to, I think it would be advisable if this board took up that discussion. I'm not talking about, and I realize I'm talking about K through 12.
Understand. So I'd be glad to entertain any conversation that the policy committee brings to us, if that's something that you two on the policy committee would discuss in your next meeting, and maybe staff can take a look at any policies related to what Ms. Young has just indicated and make that available at a next meeting. That would be helpful. I'd appreciate it.
I will say that I feel like I don't see a big need to go into a big discussion about about library materials in a policy.
Okay.
So that's going to be, I think I really liked the procedure that I think, you know, some parents have had some questions, legitimate questions about items that are in our libraries, and I think the procedures that we have, should parents find objectionable materials in our libraries, the way that those procedures are outlined, seem good. So I'm not sure if, as a member of the policy committee, I am particularly interested in bringing up some new policy to address it, when I think we have procedures that kind of handle objections right now. And I would like the objections to be definitely paid attention to and addressed. But I do think that we have procedures that are in place. We just need to make sure that they're being followed and dealt with.
Yeah, and so as a policy committee, I think it would be appropriate to take that conversation back and to look at those things, if there's agreement or not, and to see if there is something that needs to be brought forward, or if it's working. Yeah.
I have a question about that. There are books in the library, especially the high school library, that aren't used for any instructional purpose at all. They're there for kids to read, who want to check out a book. So is that going to be, will that be included in the same policy?
There are ways for parents to review the library books, yes, sir.
We haven't had any
There are
discussion
already,
about it.
but there are already procedures to deal with that.
Yep. All right. We'll move on to our consent agenda.
Even though that parent's child may never see the book.
We're going to move on to our consent agenda now. Let me just read this off. Give me a second. Item 10.1, approval of financial report and monthly bills and payroll, October 2022. Approval of minutes from October 18th, 2022 meeting. Approval of minutes from November 1st, 2022 meeting. Item 10.4, approval of revisions to policy IAA, instructional priority objectives. 10.5, approval of revisions to policy IICB, IICC, community resource persons, school volunteers. And item 10.6, approval of revisions to policy BCF, advisory committees to the board. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mr. Chair, I move, sorry. Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Ms. Ortega?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cook, for the second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. All right. Approval of personnel actions. Can I have a motion for approval of the personnel actions this evening as presented?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve personnel actions as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. Can I have a motion to approve amendment to the fiscal year 23 grants fund budget?
Mr. Chair, I approve the amendment to the FY23 grants fund budget.
In
Is
the
there a
amount
second?
of.
Oh, yes, please, in the amount of.
Oh, sorry, didn't pull that up. 1 second. What is that? 11.2?
18. Oh, yeah.
Do you see that,
I'm looking for
Ms. Hundley?
18,428.
18
No,
million.
18 million. See, that's why I knew that. 18,428,286.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Any discussion here? Seeing none, Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel. Mr. Dowell.
Aye. If I can have a motion for approval of authorization, are you okay?
Yeah, it's just a long motion.
Okay.
Who's going to take
Every time you hiccup, I'm like, what did I miss? Okay. Approval of authorization for a staff bonus payment in the amount, well, I'll let the motion read it.
I move to approve the authorization of a staff bonus payment for contracted employees employed as of November 1st, 2022, and are still employed at the time of payment in the following amounts: $500 for those contracted to work less than 4 hours a day, $750 for those contracted to work between 4 and 6 hours a day, $1,000 for those contracted to work 6 or more hours a day, and $750 for substitutes once they have worked 100 days during the 22-23 school year.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Is there a second on this motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Any discussion? I just want to say that recognizing we had a great number of teachers come out and just support one another, and I believe that this school board, our superintendent, and our staff heard you and are supportive of your needs, what makes working at WJCC attainable for you and for your families. And it was remarked that I saw maybe a sign that said that this action this evening was kind of a drop in the bucket, wasn't going to do much good, but I hope that it does. I hope that it's received in a different spirit. I hope that this signals that we do care about every single staff member, teacher, faculty member, and while we are continuing to have those real conversations about salary, raises, and we're having those conversations with our funding partners, and it's not easy, but it's worth doing, continuing to have those hard conversations. We felt like this was appropriate to the staff bonus, and that it would maybe do some good for some families that really could rely on it now. So with that, I'm ready to ask for Ms. Aller to call the roll on this.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hundley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. Thank you. All right, 11.4, approval of program studies 23-24. Have a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the award of contract
It's the program of studies.
I mixed this up.
11.
I move to approve the program of studies for 2023-24 as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hundley.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. And item 11.5, approval of award of contract for request for proposal 2023-0163 bleacher basketball stop inspection, maintenance, and repair services. May I have a motion, please?
I'm going to try this again.
Yes, Ms. Hundley.
I approve the award of the contract for request for proposal number 2023-0163, bleachers basketball stop inspection, maintenance, and repair services to TJ Distributors for an annual inspection cost of $23,380.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ortega, Ms. Hundley, excuse me, and Ms. Cook for the second. Any discussion? All right. Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Hundley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. And our last action item of the evening, approval of award of contract for invitation for bid number 2023-0520, Toano Middle School restroom renovations. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the award of contract for invitation for bid number 202-30520, Toano Middle School restroom renovations to Centennial Contractors Enterprises Incorporated for $354,998.
Thank you. Ms. Young, is there a second?
Second.
I think that was Ms. Ortega? No, Ms. Hundley? Okay, sorry. Thank you for the second, Ms. Hundley. Any discussion on this? Okay. Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
She said aye. I heard it.
Thank you. Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Henley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortica.
Aye.
Mr. Dow.
Aye. Thank you. It takes us to our board member comments. If I can start on this end with Ms. Ortega. Have any comments?
Sure. Well, I would like to start by thanking everyone that came out tonight. It actually was a great feeling to have a full house and to have community represented and come out and speak to us and let us hear directly what is needed and what's requested. I certainly acknowledge that teachers give more than 100% every day, and they are highly educated, highly skilled professionals and deserve to be paid as such. So I'm in support of being able to be competitive for a number of reasons, for doing what's right by the teachers, for providing the best staff for our kids, for making it easier for our division to start each school year off with the human resources that we need, which are the most important. So thank you to everyone that took the time and came out. Also to our other speakers. There were a handful of speakers that spoke about other topics that are important to them, and I always enjoy hearing directly from the community, and they're usually very passionate and heartfelt, which I appreciate. I also just want to circle back briefly to, not to belabor the somewhat cumbersome policy discussion, but I don't think that there's any reason that we can't acknowledge boldly that parents do have a right to determine what their child is exposed to, especially when we're talking about sensitive subjects like sexually explicit content, which is becoming more and more prolific in our society. And I just think as a school division, we do have a responsibility to protect minor children. And I don't think there's anything about protecting innocence that should pit parents against teachers, teachers against children. Teachers care about children, parents care about children, teachers are parents, parents are teachers oftentimes. And I think that a community and a school board leading by making a statement that it's the right thing to do for adults responsible for the care of children to protect innocence and age-appropriate materials is a statement that I'm proud to support. So that's what I have for tonight.
Hey, Ms. Ortega. Ms. Hundley?
It just did my heart happy to come in and see all the red. The last time I saw that was in, I believe, 2002, so almost 20 years ago, when it was standing room only. And I loved hearing the stories, and although I know how much that took for some people to come forward, even the teachers and the ones that even held the signs, there's stories there too that we didn't hear. And I mean, there's probably 5,000 stories, and it does help to hear those stories, and I'm definitely in support as a former teacher as well. I know how hard they work. I know what it took for them to come tonight, and I hope they continue to come. And you just, when I see, you hear about red, and red sometimes associated with anger or whatever, but all I felt was love tonight. So that's what I attached to it. So, and also, on parents' rights, I mean, I was an educator. I believe parents have rights, and I would like to see parents, when they execute those rights, to go through the process. It's just not a right just to say something and not follow through, or So I definitely have always believed that parents have rights for their children.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to echo my colleagues' thanks for the speakers tonight. It really was inspiring to see everybody come out and advocate for what they believe in. And I think I can't imagine there's anybody up on this dais that doesn't agree with you. It's not us that you need to convince. It's the state. Because at the end of the day, it's the state of the Commonwealth of Virginia that's sort of falling down on its responsibility to appropriately fund public education. And in the very likely scenario that they will fail and not do that again, because it's been that way since the recession at least, the responsibility then falls on the local governments to convince them to make up the difference. And our local governments are disproportionately impacted by that. And so I just did a little back of the napkin kind of reality check that I just think it's important for all of us to understand that a 1% raise here is for teachers is about, or for all staff is about $1.2 million now. Is that right? So 10% raise would be $12 million, right? And so assuming that that falls on local government to cover, in James City County, approximately 1 penny increase in real estate taxes is approximately $1 million. So it'd be a 12-cent increase in property taxes, which would take it from 83 to 95 cents. So, and that's just raises. That doesn't even start to touch class size, right? So it's a lot of money. And so again, I don't think it's us that you need to convince. It's the state and the local governments, because all we can do is ask, and I think that was made crystal clear during our CIP conversation, right? At the end of the day, we're not the deciders. We can put forth our priorities, but that is not always feasible. Our priorities are not always compatible with available resources. And so the other, so I just wanted to mention that. And then the other thing I'd like to talk about is the recent contract between the city and the county about school funding. It was recently adopted by both bodies. And for just by way of background, for those of you who don't know, up here we are actually two school boards. We have a James City County School Board and a Williamsburg School Board, but we operate together as one under a financial model put forth in that contract. And the funding is renegotiated every 5 years, so it was just recently negotiated. And we're really the envy of the state because we cooperate so well. And recently, several of us in this community, several members of the Board of Supervisors and City Council, and then myself, actually recently aided Allegheny County and the City of Covington for their recent merger. And so people do come to us to ask how it's done. And but the recent contract raised some concerns for me, and I've forwarded the contract to the Attorney General's office for a legal opinion, and that opinion will likely come after my time on the board is over. And so I hope that eventual legal clarity will help this board operationalize or adjust accordingly. So I won't address the legal concerns, but there's more than just legal issues for me that the recent contract presents. And I believe in transparency, and I've always shared publicly my thoughts on issues about WJCC, as you heard earlier on the CIP, and so this issue is no different. And I just believe in putting things on the public record, if for no other reason than to make it part of the historical record. So I'm concerned about the contract for two reasons. The first is that it may negatively impact this division in the school board. And the second is that it may negatively impact a partnership that's existed for really 3/4 of a century. So first, let me talk about how it may negatively impact WJCC. So the contract asks us to have a supermajority on the superintendent and on budget votes inclusive of both the capital and operating budgets, which isn't normal, right? No other school boards have in Virginia have such a situation where they're required a supermajority vote on any issues or that it's imposed by local government. That's very unusual. We would be an outlier on that. It's not consistent with Robert's Rules or standard parliamentary procedure. And because multiple votes often take place on those items, we just amended a grants budget today, as a matter of fact. It'll be hard to operationalize. It's also going to impact the ability to hire a superintendent. Superintendents aren't going to want to come to apply to work here. It could have a chilling effect on applicants, and I'm very concerned about that when there's that kind of reach from the funder into the school board. So it's really an outlier and an outlier situation in a concerning way for multiple reasons, and I wanted to say that publicly. And then I'd like to just talk a little bit about how it can impact our community partnership. We don't usually we usually are unanimous or 6-1 or 5-2. Very rarely are we 3-4. So I think that was solving a problem that doesn't exist. And I understand that it was in response to citizen concerns in James City County about the city having a disproportionate representation on this board. But I really want to be clear, and I think the CIP discussion made it so, that the county unilaterally decides our capital budget and our operating budget amount. the city funds formulaically. So James City County's already making those decisions unilaterally. And so that's just a fact. It's the end of story. And so it was a problem that didn't need to be solved for an issue that doesn't exist. And the idea behind the supermajority was to require a majority of James City County board members to be supportive of budget and superintendent votes. A good, well-functioning board is already there. We're already there. So to require a majority of one board sends a very clear signal to the other board that its voice doesn't matter. And I'm truly troubled by that. And I think, ironically, it may have actually, I wonder if it's actually given the city influence that it didn't previously have. So I understand that sharing these thoughts publicly may not be well received. I understand that, and I regret that. But the contract was forwarded to us. It's a public document, and I don't think we should be publicly silent. If 20 years from now someone wanted to research what happened as a result of this contract, they couldn't without getting a good understanding unless someone speaks about it publicly. So I'm sharing my concerns so they're part of the public record and to educate the community. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair, for your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Ms. Hummel?
So I would like to also thank all the teachers that came out with their posters and their heartfelt comments. I also observed that teachers really follow rules, and so I was just...
I noticed that too.
Did you notice that too? I mean, there definitely could have been wild cheering and disruptive support for what everyone was saying, but they're all in the back doing the
Called silent cheer.
Silent cheers, which were so impactful to me. The signs were impactful to me, and oh my gosh, when I saw the middle school, I just love hearing from the students because I keep thinking, what, oh my, the places he will go. He was amazing. His message was amazing, and it just gives me such hope for the future whenever I hear students like that. So I support what the teachers are going for. I understand their challenges. I also want to say to the speaker who talked about Matthew Whaley and the head custodian, I love the head Mr. Green. Can I say his name? Mr. Green is the most amazing person that is probably exemplifies the heart of WJCC and our support staff that just goes beyond what is necessary to bring joy to parents, to children, to staff, and just such a helpful guy. So it was really nice to hear the parent acknowledging that. So I just wanted to say that, and then to say I appreciate my colleague Kira for being the policy wonk that she is, and I will certainly miss the comments, the well thought out positions on things that I hadn't gone to that level of deep thinking. So I appreciate it and will miss it. So, thank you.
And we're not saying goodbye just yet.
Not yet, but soon.
Ms. Young?
Yes. First of all, Mr. Dow stole my thunder at the beginning about the presentation at Stonehouse. I was there. It was there with Dr. Heron and Mr. Dow, and I was so impressed with the fourth graders and the job they did, and the music teacher. They did an excellent job, and the young man who sang Lee Greenwood's song. It was wonderful and very, very touching, and there was a full house.
Yes, there was.
It was so nice to see people back together again. Just wonderful. And the last time that I was at Stonehouse for the same presentation, it wasn't too long after that. Well, it was just a few months after that, the pandemic came. So it's good to see things getting back to normal. I thank my colleagues on the board tonight for all of their comments. I always appreciate our school board meetings, and I appreciate the frankness and that I sense here and the sincerity of them. And I totally concur about the young man that came and spoke tonight. He was an absolute delight. I do see him going places. And he was pretty eloquent for someone that age, I thought. The other thing was, I remember the first year I taught school, and I know that was an eon ago, but I remember working, I would get off from school and I waitressed over the weekend, every weekend. I think the first 3 years I taught school, I always had a waitressing job, and during the summer, so that I could make it through the next year so I could teach kids. I've always thought of teaching as a calling, but you shouldn't be living at poverty wages and feeling like that you can't make ends meet. And unfortunately, I think all of us here are recognize the tremendous talents that these teachers have. They're certainly being recognized by the corporate world, because that's where a lot of our teachers are going. They're being headhunted, and so I think we need to keep that in mind. They have organizational skills, they have a work ethic, they're committed workers, they have ideas, they're innovative. I could go on, but I do want the teachers to know that we appreciate you, that I appreciate you. I know the amount of time it takes to be a teacher, and you totally have my support, and I'll pass it on to Dr. Beers.
Well, I think everything's pretty much, I agree with just about everything that's, well, of course I agree with everything that was said. But especially thanking the teachers that turned out at the meeting today. Very respectful, real professionals is what they really were. And whatever we can do to get closer to that 10%, I fully support that. I also was thoroughly, the first time that I've been able to go to that, the Veterans Day celebration at Stonehouse. I wasn't able to go that night, but I went for the dress rehearsal, and I got to tell you, there were lumps in throats, as we even, there was a gentleman in front of me, and he was in the Air Force, and when they sang the Air Force song, he stood right up there, and it was phenomenal. And I know a lot of work went into that. A lot of people were involved in that. All the teachers that were around in the building. It was truly a moving experience for me. And really, I don't have anything else to say except that I wish everybody a safe and thoughtful Thanksgiving next Thursday. Remembering also that there are going to be those who may not be with us next Thursday, and we want to think and remember them as well. And even in this difficult time, I think we have very much to be thankful for. So I wish everybody that safe and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Dr. Beers. Ms. Cook, thank you for your words regarding the city-county contract. And this is not meant to drum up any further discussion on it, but just a point of clarification. You used the word required a few times, and I just want to clarify, especially for this board, to understand that city-county contract does not require a supermajority by this board. What it does do is it indicates to this board what the city and county may or may not accept from this board with respect to hiring a superintendent or operating our CIP budget. But it's up to us, as Ms. Cook indicated, to do the hard work of deliberating and discussing and coming to consensus. And vast majority of the time we're able to do that, 5-2, 6-1, very few times 4-3. But there is no requirement that we cannot send up to our funding partners a CIP, recommended CIP that passed by a 4-3. So I just want to make sure that that's understood. They're indicating to us what might happen if we do, but it also might not happen. I really appreciate it, and it was noted to me that we had the city of Williamsburg's newly elected Councilwoman Stacy Kernschurer, I hope I pronounced that right, Kernschurer, please forgive me if I didn't, but thank you for joining us for the part of the meeting that you did. It was good to see you, and already actively engaged with your responsibilities. It was also great, it was awesome to see Mr. Jim Kelly in attendance as well, and I wish he would have stayed around a little bit longer so I could have given him a hug, but maybe I'll catch up with him another time. And not saying goodbye to Ms. Cook just yet, but this community and this school division has a great debt to owe to you. So, but anyway, yeah, thank you for your words, Dr. Beers, and wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving, but also remembering those that won't be here. You know, this division very recently lost 2 more teachers. So just want to offer my family our prayers, the board's thoughts to the Morris family and the Jacqueline, the Jacqueline family
I think
for their loss.
if we could just have a moment of silence just for that for a minute,
great.
that would be awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for suggesting that, Ms. Hunley. We're going to move on to our upcoming events. I feel like I get too emotional at the end of these meetings lately. Upcoming events. Our board, most of our board will be at the VSBA annual convention tomorrow. The time is blank, but I think we need to arrive around noon or 1 o'clock, something like that. Was it 2?
At 2.
Okay.
But you have to register.
At the both virtual and at the Williamsburg Lodge, 310 South England Street in Williamsburg. Our policy committee is meeting again on November 22nd at 8:30 a.m., room 108 at central office. And the student advisory committee meeting on December 7th at 3 p.m. At the Warhill High School Media Center. All right, upcoming meetings. We've got our joint meeting with our city council and Gem City County Board of Supervisors on December 2nd at 9 a.m. That's going to be at the Rec Center, 301 Long Hill Road, meeting rooms A, B, and C, and then closed session followed by our work session on December 6th, 4 and 4:30 p.m. respectively at the Annex Central Office. Okay. With that, I think that's all of our business this evening. Thank you for those of you that stuck around this long. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Good evening.